see, it's quite different here.
What's up taking
The house is true to you. No, come on. Oh my gosh. Getting the anxiety.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, that's weird. Guess I'm gonna have to go without earbuds because when I tried plugging in the earbud thing, it just triggered it where it would only pick up like there was a mic there, but there's no mic. So fun.
I'm just going to play the intro and we'll start right at 9 o'clock.
Très bien.
And hello, Twitch, and anyone who might be watching later on YouTube or anywhere else. My name is Brandon. You can call me Luminaire, Padre Luminadre, Padre, Lumi, whatever you like. Steve?
Hello, I am Steven. I go on the various gaming things as DDK Madcat, same as on Twitch. You can call me Steve, Maddie, or that guy.
Indeed. So I'm going to say a couple words about our format for our show. This is a pretty standard talk show podcast style thing where we're going to talk about, well, subjects that are near and dear to the hearts of tabletop gamers and that, that don't really get talked about all that often. For those who are interested in joining the discussion, we are reading the Twitch chat. So if you make good points, ask questions, absolutely we'll give you a shout out and we will interact that way.
I'm super excited.
Good. So I'm going to say a few words about myself to begin with. I have been playing tabletop role-playing games since, the year 2000, I think. I think I was like 12. And I started on Dungeons & Dragons 3.5.
A very good addition, in my personal opinion.
A lot of people agree. The second game I ever played, and one that I always enjoyed, although I never felt like the game went long enough. Like it died within a month, but it was I believe the second edition of Vampire the Masquerade.
The vampires. Those bloody, bloody vampires.
Indeed, the bloody vampires. And there were just some things about the way the system ran that made me, interested in it. Not just from a teenage edgelord kind of position, but from just a gaming standpoint, there were some very good things about the systems that kept me interested in World of Darkness, even though I wasn't playing it for the better part of a decade.
I would agree. The whole World of Darkness setting is fantastic with all the ways the various games interweave, and the bare bones fact that you can take everything from it and put it in the same game if you have a storyteller who is batshit insane. Indeed.
And it's not a game line that I feel like gets played all that often outside of LARP groups. And I wanted to talk about it tonight so we could hope to maybe get to the bottom of why that might be, and also so that we could talk about the good things about the system so that any dungeon masters listening to me tonight or anyone interested in playing the game can get a perspective on it that isn't the normal perspective you've seen on the internet about the World of Darkness game line.
Works for me because we essentially live on the internet. We are aware of how dark and dreary it can possibly be there.
Yes, indeed, Steve. Yes, indeed. So, where would you like to begin, Steve? Should we start with just a rundown of the setting in case anybody is unfamiliar with it?
I mean, we should, kind of sort of go over a bit of that, and just to take my part of the introduction, I've been playing tabletop games, not near as much experience as Brandon here. I only picked it up within the last, say, 8 years or so. Started out once again with 3.5 D&D, and then eventually we moved on to Pathfinder, my group there, and it wasn't until here within the last 2 years that I've been introduced to World of Darkness, and it is fantastic, and I love everything about it. I've been currently in one game. There was talks of a second one that kind of fell apart, but I'm looking forward to this discussion so much.
I'm glad, Steve. So, introductions out of the way. Let's go ahead and talk about the raw rote basics of what World of Darkness actually is. So, it is a game system. You can make different games within it. It's a dice system, but unlike other games, unlike say your standard D&D format, it's not just rules, it's also a setting.
Yeah, which you could argue that you have your modules and stuff from, Pathfinder's Adventuring Paths and all that.
Right. You should, and you can look at it that way. You can look at it as, it's got this setting to it that's kind of like, like you said, adventuring. What was it in Pathfinder? What was it called?
They're adventuring paths in Pathfinder, I believe, and then like in D&D, it's just modules.
Right, and it had the worlds Eberron, Faerun.
Faerun, lovely place. The setting that launched 1 million Drow Rangers.
We may never recover.
Ever. Regardless of that, pardon me, like you were saying, World of Darkness has its own setting behind everything, and you could get away with that in D&D and Pathfinder and your other game systems are like, oh, this is why this particular race has these things, and oh, these classes are built this way. And really, the way, in my opinion, that just boils down to archetypes. Like, a rogue is going to rogue like this, a paladin is going to paladin like this, so on and so forth. Where in World of Darkness, I've noticed it gives you the backstory for the various building blocks you use for your character to describe why they act that way, but it's little stories and everything behind that into the setting that weaves everything in. So sure, you can take the building blocks and make your character however you want, but there's also like in-ground stuff deep in the setting that if you talk to somebody who doesn't play your particular type of game, understands what you're talking about.
Right, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the splats a splat is a game line within World of Darkness. Like, say, World of Darkness is its own overarching theme, but within that, there's Vampire, which is a splat, and there's Werewolf, which is a splat. These are self-contained games contained within the greater thing that is World of Darkness. Anyway, as I was saying...
My God, are there a bunch of them?
There are a lot. But as I was saying, the thing about the splats is that they exist within what should be a very complex and interesting world, because the world of Darkness is our world. It's just shitty. Our world has the occasional corrupt police officer, say, and sometimes there's brutality, maybe. But in the World of Darkness, every cop is either that or an overworked gumshoe who's never going to be able to get ahead because everything is terrible.
And if they're not one of the above listed, then they die very, very quickly.
Right. In our world, we've got corrupt politicians, I'll say the name Donald Trump without any commentary. But in the World of Darkness, Donald Trump is pillaging the economy to make his cronies rich while starting wars overseas for reasons he does not fully understand, because there isn't just one Illuminati, there are 5, and they're all against each other, and some of them don't know the others exist.
Yup, the entire point behind it is like, oh, you look at Congress and various political organizations, like, oh yeah, they're evil bastards. But in World of Darkness, not only are they evil bastards, but they're possibly vampires or
Right. They're not just evil; they are capital E evil in World of Darkness.
would you list all politicians as Sabat or Camarilla?
I do not know how to answer that question because it turns out in the World of Darkness we're all monsters.
Indeed.
And when I say that, when I put it that way, it may sound like it's actually a bit of an edge festival, and that is the basis for the reputation that it's gotten on the internet.
I mean, true, the flagship franchise for World of Darkness, most would say, is Vampire the Masquerade.
Right, and RL without nuance. You know what? Yes, actually. Purple Heart, that is absolutely true. It is in a lot of ways real life without the nuance.
But then without the nuance, there's so much more nuance stacked on top of it because all of these Illuminati groups will kill you if you're part of their group and you reveal the whole, in terms of Vampire the Masquerade terms, the quote-unquote masquerade, that vampires do not exist and humanity is safe.
Well, actually, there's an interesting thing there, because it's not like the nuance is gone. It's just that everything has been shifted. I want to say very slightly, but it's actually more than slightly. Everything has just been shifted a little bit toward badness.
Yeah, World of Darkness, as it implies, is World of Darkness. Very little light. There is no good, evil, light, and dark. There's varying shades of gray in terms of various tropes and archetypes.
Yeah, it's a very gray and black sort of setting.
Yeah, there is no good, and if there is any good, it does not last long because the various bad groups will team up to take care of it.
That said, you can avoid the Edge Festival. You really can. Because what you have to do when you're working within this setting is to present the world as being terribly shitty. But you gotta have these points of light, these ways that maybe the player or maybe side characters can make things a little bit better. Because it's not like everyone is suffering every day of their lives. It's just our world, but slightly shittier. That's all it is.
Unless you play in a very specific game type that our group is currently playing in which case it's just Crapsack World strapped across Crapsack World, and oh, yes, everything's going to end.
And soon, we'll talk about our own game that we've been doing a little bit later in the show.
Fine by me.
I actually hadn't planned to talk about it, but now that you bring it up, I feel like we're going to have to. What I do want to do, though, is I want to bring up a character sheet from your basic World of Darkness game.
World of Darkness, courtesy of White Wolf Publishing.
Yes, precisely. Just give me 1 second to make a minor alteration to the stream.
I'll noodle while you do so.
And there it is. So, what we've got here is the character sheet, the base character sheet for World of Darkness. As you can see, you can't see anything because I messed it up. As you can see,
I can see it.
As you can see, it contains very little in the way of blank spaces to write numbers in.
Glory be for those of you like me who are terrible at math.
Well, yes. But I wanted to use this opportunity to draw the distinction between World of Darkness and Dungeons and Dragons. We've already done that a little bit with the modern fantasy setting as opposed to the fantasy setting, like the fantasy setting. But it's also, in a lot of ways, a much simpler game than D&D, simpler to understand. Because for every stat, there are 5 bubbles. Having no bubbles means you don't know how to do that thing. Having one bubble is you know how to do it, but you're not very good at it. Having 5 bubbles means you are probably one of the best in the world at doing that thing. And having more than 5 bubbles means you are not human.
Isn't standard human, is it 1 or 2 bubbles? I always forget.
It's about 2 is average. 2 is average.
Think of it this way for anybody listening in who's played D&D and not World of Darkness. Anybody with 1 in your set, your basic civilian humanoid characters, your commoners in Pathfinder D&D terms, they would have a, let's say, stats of 10. In Pathfinder, that's standard. Essentially that. Your stats are effectively 10.
Capped at 10, more importantly.
If you're human, correct.
Just for an example of how this ends up working out in, like, gameplay, tell me, Steve, in D&D, how many gnolls would it take to kill a level 5 fighter?
How many gnolls?
How many gnolls? How many good old CP 1/4 gnolls?
CP 1/4 gnolls? A lot is probably the answer, but it depends on tactics and whether or not your GM has the luck of the ultra crit, or if they're, rated on the Hitler scale of mass murder.
Right. But you could say that a level 5 fighter's not losing a 1v5, say.
No, not at all. It'll be pressing. They're going to get hit a bunch, but a level 5 fighter's going to have at least power attack and cleave. A level 5 fighter's going to have mostly strength base, so power attack, they double their damage, or double in 0.5, whatever, for power attack, and then they get to cleave, and then just repeat, rinse, lather, repeat, add in some whirlwind stuff in there. So yeah, basically it can almost be resolved in a couple of rounds, depending if the dice are in your favor.
Right, now let's compare that to a high-level World of Darkness character in a bar brawl. So your brawlers have maybe 3 strength, maybe 2 in brawl. The character in question may have a very high defense, may have maybe 8 defense. Which will mean that the first person to make an attack isn't going to hit him. We're talking chance die. We're talking rolling 1d10, and you'll hit him on a 10. But the next person to take a swing has a slightly better chance. And the next person to swing has a better chance than that. So by stacking more characters, even though they are, to put it in D&D terms, way lower level, if you're in a 1v5 situation in World of Darkness, you are in trouble.
If you're in a 1v1 situation in World of Darkness, depending on what you're going up against, you're in trouble. Because being a modern setting, guns are things, and guns hurt.
That is true. I wanted to point that out while we're at it. So, this size thing right here, your size for a normal person is 5. Your stamina goes up to 5. That means that the most health points you can possibly have is 10.
Pending various things, depending on what game you're playing.
Right, and this all changes splat to splat. What I'm saying is that the way the stats work make everything just ever so slightly more realistic, because you don't end up in a situation where 4 guys with swords can't hurt you.
I mean, it's entirely possible that given certain situations, those 4 guys with a sword won't hurt the character, but it's just as likely that they will.
Right. A gnoll with a short sword will do up to 8 damage on a good hit.
Yeah, let's say, on a good hit, a short sword is going to be 1d6. Their strength is, say...
I assumed they had +2.
Yeah, let's say about +2, but that's assuming they get max. Let's say standard is going to be about maybe 5 damage.
Sure, but the thing is that a level 5 fighter might have 50 HP.
Easily.
Right. There comes a point in these role-playing games where the difference between a high-level character and a low-level character is so massive that it starts to become unrealistic. And it has its own benefit. I mean, I am not going to hate on D&D. I play the hell out of D&D.
Same here.
But if you're going for realism,
World of Darkness is the way to go.
and especially when you compare it to, say, like D20 Modern. Did you ever play D20 Modern?
Never had an opportunity to play D20 Modern. Never had an opportunity to play GURPS.
Well,
I've strictly been 3.5, Pathfinder, and World of Darkness.
The game I played of D20 Modern had the same problem end up happening, where we had a character who guns could no longer harm.
Basically became Master Chief.
Right, basically, like, just the right stats and some armor, and suddenly machine gun spray was just a inconvenience.
Let's rephrase that in more tabletop terms. Essentially, the character becomes an Adeptus Astartes.
There you go. Good old Space Marines.
Except in my case, I'm leaning a bit more towards the spiky bit of things. So, beers for the beer throne, shots for the shot god.
It's also relatively, the game is relatively simple in terms of how you actually roll dice. Because you don't have to worry about adding numbers to dice or subtracting numbers from dice. You just roll a certain number of dice. Like, the only dice you need to have to play this game are 10-sided dice. You need to have, like, 15 of them, but that's all you need. Now, does this mean that the system lacks something in terms of depth? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, there is some depth missing from World of Darkness. And in terms of pure combat, the D20 system is just superior.
In terms of pure combat.
Right. But when you look at it another way, when you look at it in terms of, your roleplay stuff, so World of Darkness is ideal for players who don't want to have combat every session. Because the skill system, the way skills work, is actually somewhat deeper than D20. If that makes sense.
So much deeper. So much deeper. I think the only thing that comes close in terms of depth might be the various skill system from things like Dark Heresy.
Right, and that's a niche game. I mean,
oh yeah, that's like you might find 1 out of every 10 people who've played it.
All right, I'm just going to throw our splash page back up. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. My fault. Maybe how many people have played Dark Heresy, do you think?
It depends on where you're at, but I would say just go to any given convention. You might find 1 out of every 10 people who's played Dark Heresy. Maybe more who's heard of it but haven't played it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not one of them. I have never played that game.
I need to fix that. But then again, I think you would have more people who've played Dark Heresy than you've had play the BattleTech RPG. But World of Darkness is kind of, I mean, you got your D&D, which is your kind of tearing it out in terms of what more people know. Everybody knows about D&D. Everyone's heard about it. Then you got Pathfinder. Then I think a solid third in terms of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Popularity?
Popularity would probably be World of Darkness stuff. That's just how I think it might be. Because at that point, again, everybody's heard of Vampire the Masquerade. they might not know it's from White Wolf Publishing. They might just remember, the video games, but they've heard of Vampire the Masquerade.
That's true, because Bloodlines was an actual masterpiece.
Correct.
Well, not when it first came out, but now it is.
Mm-hmm.
But, well, it's just never going to be as recognized as D&D, is it?
No, probably not, because D&D had that, the whole satanic panic thing backing it up. That was just publicity for ages.
I mean, yes, I guess, but it's kind of weird to think about the satanic panic being a positive thing.
Look at it this way, in terms of, as you said earlier, being a teenage edgelord, suddenly everybody is saying, oh, this is bad, this is worshiping Satan, you shouldn't do this. What's the first thing that's going to come to your mind when you think about that?
Oh, I should definitely do that.
Correct. So I think that helped solidify D&D is in the minds of a lot of people early on, and then it just kind of kept that, and so you hear about it all the time. D&D's referenced in everything. I mean, it's a primary part of Stranger Things. It's referenced in other things. You got celebrities like Vin Diesel who played D&D.
It still just warms my heart to this day to know that.
That Vin Diesel is a true OG nerd?
Yes, exactly. And see, at the end of the day, I think that's actually the main issue with World of Darkness, because you think about D&D, and yeah, okay, you imagine a bunch of nerds sitting around a table throwing dice at each other and eating Cheetos. Sure, because that's usually what's happening. But you also think about Vin Diesel. You also think about swords and sorcery and the fantasy genre. You think about Game of Thrones, you think about Lord of the Rings, all of these super popular fantasy stories. But what comes to mind when you think of, say, Vampire the Masquerade?
What comes to mind when I think Vampire the Masquerade? Usually vampire LARPers.
Exactly. Teenagers wearing fangs and capes. That's what comes to mind. And I know that that's not the case, because I have played the game on the tabletop and had a lot of fun with it. But that doesn't change the fact that that's what you think of.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I played the game too. I played it very briefly before one of our players' life got in the way and he had to do other things. But yeah, that's what you think of at first when you hear Vampire the Masquerade. And, granted, that's just a very small portion of the thing. And if that's what you want to do, by all means do it. I think that's awesome if you want to wear fake fangs and capes and do the whole Vampire Masquerade LARP thing.
Right, I wasn't suggesting that was bad. I'm just saying that that's what a normal person thinks of, and that tends to turn normal people off of the game.
Usually, in most cases. But, and sometimes, people are just like... this looks weird and interesting. This looks weird, but I'm kind of enthralled.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You can have different reactions to it. You know what the weird stereotype about Vampire the Masquerade was when I was in high school?
You're gonna have to probably tell me this, because when I was in high school, I hadn't even heard of Vampire the Masquerade.
So the weird thing about it, and the weird thing about this, is that, okay, I'm sorry, let me start at the beginning. Yes, the mental image of Vampire the Masquerade players as weird LARPers wearing fangs was a thing. Everybody knew somebody who'd met somebody who played Vampire the Masquerade and was super weird about it. But that's not the weird thing. The weird thing is, somehow, the moment we started playing that game, we were familiar with the concept of the fish mouth. I'm going to explain the concept of the fish mouth real quick. In Vampire the
I can't.
Okay, in Vampire the Masquerade, one of the clans, factions, types of vampire is called a Malkavian, and their theme is that they're insane. Is that fair to say? Insane?
Absolutely fair. Looks like someone's come to judge us. Judge all of us.
I am being judged as we speak. Also, welcome, Ben.
It's Ben! Hello!
See, okay. Super Sticky Shark, I'm gonna address that in just a second, because that's good, that's useful. Anyway, so what a Fishmalk is a Malkavian who is, well, not actually a lunatic, just what a... Is it okay to say what a teenager thinks of as a crazy person? Like, they're not crazy, they're not, spooky, touched in the head, they're not schizophrenic, they're not paranoid, they don't fit any of the normal types of insanity that we think of. They are just wacky. Lol random, exactly. It's what a cartoon thinks a crazy person is like. That is exactly right.
Rip Van Winkle from Hellsing Ultimate Abridged.
Yes, precisely. And I'm actually going... Super Sticky Shark says, my first World of Darkness game was actually LARPing Vampire the Masquerade. It was a huge group and definitely popular. See, that's a really interesting thing, and that's something that I almost wish I had experienced, because, my group didn't include any of any LARPers. Like, we had never met a LARPer, honestly.
I don't think I've ever really met a LARPer either. I would love to, take a weekend and just go do that. Whether it be like a D&D style or, World of Darkness. That just sounds spectacular, but it's nothing that's come up in my area.
Right, and the thing is, because we haven't done it, like, because there was no LARPing community when I was in high school, we had this concept of LARPers as, like, super weird.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. There was a documentary. God, this was ages ago. This had to have been at least 12 years ago, back when places like Blockbuster and Movie Gallery and various video rental places were a thing. They had this documentary about LARPing, and I can't remember the name of it. It's not Knights of Badassdom. It was something else, and it just kind of just follows this group of LARPers, and I thought it was a little weird but cool and interesting, and it didn't occur to me again until the movie Role Models came out years ago.
I never saw that movie. I have no idea.
We're watching that movie next time I visit, because it is fantastic.
Purple Heart says it's like football for our peers. Actually, I have seen I've seen screenshots from real life, Steve.
You have?
Yes! Anyway, I've seen screenshots from real life, from, like, one of those fantasy LARPs, where they've got the foam swords and the armor and stuff, and it really does look physically intense.
Oh, everything I've seen about it, they go full contact. I mean, granted, it's foam swords, but there's, not exactly foam core. You've got, something holding their shape, and they go full on contact. It's amazing.
We are digressing from our point slightly, though.
True enough.
So, although we have come to a kind of a conclusion while we were talking about this, and it's that the unpopularity of World of Darkness, well, no, not unpopularity. The stereotypes about World of Darkness players kind of come from the stereotypes about the LARPing community.
Well, LARPing community and nerds in general.
Right, but the LARPing community has always been considered, and again, I I am not disparaging our LARPing community. Anyway, but the LARPing community has always been considered the weirdest of us nerds.
Depending on circles, yeah.
There's this idea that for some reason, those of us who go out and LARP or whatever are weirder than the ones who just stay in their basement.
And they're the ones who are more likely LARPers are like to invest.
You know what? That's actually fine. I can work with that. Yeah, LARPers tier 2. Fair enough, Saichon.
I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, granted, depending on who you ask, you could think that the nerds who are also into, jockey things and play sports are a bit weird at times too, but to each their own. You do you, have fun with whatever it is.
Right. And I think that the other problem, and I'm trying really hard to drag us back to topic, right? I think that the other reason that World of Darkness just isn't as popular has to do with modern fantasy itself.
Yeah, modern fantasy comes.
Well, okay, so think about modern fantasy for a second, right? You can probably think of a dozen good, different definitions of good, but you can probably think of a dozen, popular culture titles that are modern fantasy. Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Angel, Charmed.
Supernatural.
Supernatural's good, though.
So is Buffy. Do we need to have a talk?
No, we don't need to have a talk. I agree. Pretty much anything that man has ever done is gold.
Age of Ultron.
I said pretty much, not everything.
Right. But my point is, in modern fantasy, you can create a really good story. It's not like modern fantasy is itself lacking as a genre.
Oh, not at all. It's just that when you look at a lot of it, I guess you could also include. Technically, you can include Blade in there, which if you look at Blade, it's very similar to Vampire the Masquerade anyway. Now I have thoughts that Blade is just a Vampire the Masquerade game that's just gone off the rails.
Actually, it would. What year did Blade come out?
To the internet.
It wouldn't surprise me terribly if World of Darkness took inspiration from Blade or vice versa.
The original Blade film with Wesley Snipes came out in 1998, but the comics had been around a lot longer.
Right. Blade was a comic book, yeah. I always forget that for some reason.
Because Wesley Snipes is the only Blade we need.
I don't disagree. But, with the exception of Blade, okay? Because Blade is obviously not this trope. But when you think about, Buffy the Vampire Slayer or Supernatural, these are both, they spend a lot of time being really overblown dramas, right?
Bringing it back to the way we described it, edgelordy.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, wait. Constantine was good too, and the exact same thing. Not the Keanu Reeves movie, the series they came out with that was canceled because that show was really good.
Was that based on the DC comic?
That was straight up based on the DC comics, and it was brutal.
That sounds awesome. Anyway, So what I'm kind of getting at is I think that modern fantasy as a setting kind of has a negative connotation among role players.
Why do we want to play this dark and gritty thing that reminds us so much of real life but worse when we could be, off rescuing giant, big, beautiful, busty elven maidens from demonic dragons?
Kind of. Maybe with a tinge of why would I roleplay my own life?
Fair enough.
But there's... actually, just, hold on 1 second. I need me another beer.
While he does that, I will, I don't know. Sit here, try to entertain the chat. How is everyone? So nice to see so many people coming out to support this first attempt. We welcome you all. Can you hold off on your beef with Modern for just 1 second till Brandon gets back? Because I want him to see this as well.
I am back. I heard someone had a beef.
Purple Heart does.
Modern is hard to moderate because there are a ton of people who do not understand how the world works. Yeah, okay. It's a really interesting point. Okay.
It is a really interesting point, and it's more of a thing for some of the groups we're a part of because we're from all over. I think in terms if you're doing a modern setting with people in real life, in person, it's a little bit easier because they are all come from a similar background.
Right. Although,
like me and you have similar views about the world because we're from similar areas.
We are, in fact, Midwestern rednecks.
I'm more southern, but yeah.
Psh, that's not the South.
Want to fight about it?
Yeah.
1v1 me, bro.
Law stuff, science stuff, not being aware of all kinds of awkward things. Yeah, that's true. That is true. But it's a slightly different... I mean, it's a slightly different situation when you're actually tabletopping, because you've got the GM, or actually storyteller in World of Darkness is called a storyteller, but you've got a storyteller right there to mitigate that. Because
mitigate a little bit, but most of the times I've ever had issues, it's mainly been between a player and the GM storyteller, DM.
Right, but when you get in a direct conflict with the DM, what happens?
Rocks fall, you die.
Precisely.
I mean, also, if it's a real-life game around the table, you have to worry about them, the other players bodily hurling you from the house, or calling the cops, or
throwing Cheetos.
As a distinctly American thing, getting Granddad's gun.
Yeah, so I have not heard of that happening, but it's definitely a possibility around here. It's kind of worrisome, honestly.
I do agree that voice RP and stuff is spectacular. It makes it easier to convey emotions and opinion. Like, I can type out whatever, and depending on how somebody's mood set is, they can view whatever I type out as either being snarky or irreverent, kind of the same thing, or sad. It all comes down to what a person reads into it. Whereas if you can hear a person's voice and in person see their mannerisms and how they're acting the character and speaking with their hands and so forth, it makes it a little bit easier to convey.
Right, and there's a few other things that come into it when you're actually tabletop role playing that just doesn't come through in text. And honestly, I think that the comparison between freeform text RP that you find on the internet and tabletop roleplay, or even like voiced roleplay over the internet like we do, I feel like that could really be its own topic that we could spend a whole day on.
And once again, we've gone off the rails. The heresy train has no brakes.
It's a work in progress. We're going to go off the rails occasionally. And that's fine. I like it being organic, but we're here to talk about specifically this one thing, the World of Darkness.
Maybe we'll make... Before we go on, to any of our listeners out there who would like to contribute future topics, I believe we found a future topic there. Please feel free to link them in chat, and we will take them under consideration for further viewing and maybe see if we can bring other people in on this wonderful topic.
And if you happen to think of a topic while we're not actively broadcasting, my Twitter is right there on the splash page at Padre Luminadre. Just feel free to tweet at me, or if you're in my Discord, just pass me a message.
And if you don't feel like letting Brandon see said message, you can always pass it along to me for the same Discord people.
Indeed. There's also Twitch messages. Lots of ways to get in touch with people these days without knowing their name. It's really weird.
And a bit disturbing. Speaking of disturbing, I believe we were talking about a fish milk.
So we were.
The asterisks are not showing for me.
No, I think they're meant... Oh, yeah, because because it's going to, it's not going to allow links. Anyway, So the fish milk is like a really classic example of, and I'm using quote fingers here, World of Darkness players not actually knowing how to roleplay.
Correct. Well, I mean, everybody's got that one character. Everybody's allowed at least 3 characters when they're first starting out.
Right. I'm not saying... Okay. Again, this is a stereotype that I'm bringing to the fore here. There's this idea that people who play World of Darkness are somehow not as good at the actual role-playing thing as, like, people who D&D, for example.
Granted, both groups I've played with have been hardcore role players anyway, so I'm out of it.
You know what? Actually, hang on. I have a better way to put that. A better way to put that would be, and it's not, it's a difference in perspective, really. When someone doesn't really get how to roleplay their character, D&D doesn't just fall apart like World of Darkness tends to.
Oh yeah, I could see that happening. I can see that happening really damn quickly, and I think pretty much pretty much at that point, if a player doesn't know how to roleplay their character, then you have to have a damn good storyteller to save it.
Right, exactly. So, if you are bad at being a bard in D&D, it's not going to damage the game, because you're going to play your bardic music, do interpretive dance, give your buffs out, and it's going to go as normal, because when you don't know what to say, the rogue's going to step in, and it's going to be alright.
And for D&D players, that can mean the rogue either steps in as the other face of the party, or the rogue steps in and cuts someone's throat.
Well, true. But the real difference is, that because the system supports roleplay so much more than it does combat in World of Darkness, it makes the roleplay more important, and means that when the roleplay fails, the game fails.
Luckily, every time I played World of Darkness so far, I've yet to see that occur, both in Genius and Vampire the Masquerade I played, albeit briefly. But granted, that was with 2 groups of extraordinarily gifted role players and gamers. So...
Right. And, another thing about the World of Darkness system that I've just realized is it's not that it's harder to min-max, it's actually almost easier to min-max than it is in D&D, but min-maxing accomplishes less.
It really does, but it's also with the way you're setting up your character. Granted, in D&D point buy, you can min-max your heart's content, you can subtract points, so on and so forth. World of Darkness, you don't get that luxury. You get your points that you can distribute outwards, which I don't believe we've really covered on beyond what the points are. But this is kind of what I'm going at here. Brandon, could you bring back up the stat page or the character sheet?
Yes, I can. This is, once again, the generic World of Darkness character sheet, courtesy of White Wolf.
I'll just wait for this to load so I can expand upon this. So as I was saying, in Pathfinder and D&D, you have your various ways of establishing what your character stats are. You can either do the dice roll system, like roll 3d6, so on and so forth, and those are your stats, or you use point buy. You have so many points to distribute between your various attributes. In World of Darkness, it's different, but I think it pays off better because it makes min-maxing a little bit less of a problem when it comes to actual attributes. Because for each attribute you have, depending on which splat you're using, whether it's vampire or genius, which is a fan-made splat, werewolf, so on and so forth, mage, each individual attribute, you pick your primary, secondary, and tertiary attribute. So you want physical, physical, mental, and social, correct?
Yes.
So when you pick that, you decide, okay, which one of these three roles do you want to be your primary stat? And let's say, I want to be a physical character. Okay, so you have so many pips, as it were, and as you can see, the various little bubbles and the pips there. You have so many pips you can put into your character in this particular area. You can divide those up between, let's say, it's a strength, if it's going physical, strength, dexterity, and stamina. I think let's say you have 13 pips. You have 13 pips to put into those three categories, and that's what you get. Okay, so what do you want your secondary to be? Let's go social. Then you have, say, 9 to put up in your social, and then your tertiary, even less. At that point, granted, you could min-max to be whatever you want, but it doesn't allow you to just completely and utterly subtract something from something else to fully min-max.
Right, and it also, you don't get a situation where you make another character irrelevant. Like, you could max out strength and brawl, and you could pretty easily deck any character in one punch. But that doesn't help you when you come up against a computer.
It doesn't help you come against a computer. It doesn't help you if you come up against, also in terms of defense, which is different from D&D because it's, in defense and World of Darkness, you have opposed roles to an extent.
Not in the current iteration, actually. In the current iteration, it's just your dice pool is reduced by your target's defense. So, like, that character with 5 strength and 5 brawl I mentioned, who's throwing 10 dice. Well, if his opponent has 3 dex and 2 athletics, he's taking 5 dice out of that pool because the character's defending himself. So you're rolling 5 dice for your attacks instead of 10.
Which makes sense, and also it essentially means that it's easier for that person to not get one shot. It's impossible for that person to get one shot at this point.
Right, it's impossible for them to get one shot by that character in one turn.
If you bring something like other characters, which we'll get onto later, things become more ridiculous and hilarious.
Right, and that's something that's something that might be underrated about World of Darkness, is that it is seen as a really somber kind of RP, but it has this capacity for hilarity.
Oh, absolutely.
Like the point at which you're throwing 14 dice at a medicine check. For example,
that's absolutely hysterical.
Right, exactly. There really is room in World of Darkness. It's supposed to be serious. It is, and you should stay serious. But All work and no play makes Jack what?
Rather dull, I believe.
A serial killer. All work and no play makes Jack a serial killer.
We pulled from two completely different places there, and I'm glad we did.
Speaking of serial killers, there is a splat for that.
Yes, there is. There's a splat for just about everything in World of Darkness. It's fantastic. And as we were saying, like, sure, it is somber. You've got your vampires, your werewolves, your Frankenstein's monsters, all various things that you are bringing and pulling from for this. Demons, mummies, all pretty much bad. It doesn't mean that they have to be, just somber assholes all the time. As we've said earlier in the stream, podcast, whatever this is, it's a world of gray and black, not black and white. So, granted, your vampires might be evil, blood-sucking bastards, but to other vampires and most other supernatural creatures they interact with, they might be swell, fun guys to be around. It really just comes down to, as we were discussing, the role play of the character.
Right, and the game has built-in ways to prevent you from being a complete asshole. Well, not prevent you necessarily, punish you for being a complete asshole.
Oh, yes. Shall we move on to that, or do we have
Yeah, let's talk
else?
about that for a second, actually. So Dungeons & Dragons has the morality axis, right?
The year alignment axis, depending on which edition. I'm pretty sure most people are familiar with the 3x3 of lawful to chaos, good to evil.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Lawful to chaos, good to evil. World of Darkness doesn't have that exactly. What it has instead is every splat has their own morality and or sanity bar.
And it is such a beautiful thing in every game I've played.
Yes. So your morality / sanity bar usually starts about 7 out of 10. And having it be more than 7, 8 or 9 or 10, is entirely possible and can give you a lot of good benefits. But then you stand more risk of losing it. Because you lose morality based on the actions of your character. The lower your morality gets, the harder it is to lose, but the worse it gets. The first time you lose morality, your character starts going a little crazy. The second time, the third time you lose morality, your character starts going maybe just a little more crazy. And if it ever hits 0, you become unplayable.
It's not even a thing where it's negotiable. If your morality or whatever it is that you're using based on the game hits 0, you're done. Granted, each individual splat book has different opinions on what causes a morality check, but once you get to the round where you're at 1, it basically requires you, I have yet to see one, basically to take a morality check when you're at 1 humanity, whatever it is, basically requires you to perform acts of mass genocide.
Or worse, but... And yes, that's absolutely true. Saichan74 has just pointed out that to lose the 10.1, all you have to do is have a selfish thought.
Remember how we said earlier how all the cops in the World of Darkness are either corrupt as hell or just broken, beaten gumshoes? Humans in the World of Darkness have the same morality tracker, in theory, as it were. So it's virtually impossible for someone to be at a 10 unless they are a god or an angel or just really that damn good.
Right, like, people just don't come in morality 10. So, I want to talk about the splats for just a second. We've mentioned some of the splats.
Should we mention the splat? Should we just kind of go over a brief description of each splat by name and what that kind of covers?
Boy, that might take a minute.
I mean,
Okay.
how long do we have?
Oh, we got all kinds of time.
Exactly.
So to talk about the splats real quick, the main ones are Vampire, where you play a vampire. Geist. What is a Geist?
Geist, according to one of my favorite websites, 1D4chan, is essentially you die and are brought back by a ghost, and then the ghost resides in your body.
Doesn't a ghost reside in my body all the time?
Your soul resides in your body. In World of Darkness, you have a soul, and if you die, you can lose that soul. I suppose.
Okay, cool. There's Werewolf, obviously.
I would look at it like this in terms of Geist. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with this book because I might be one of the few people who's ever read it and who's actually in the stream. Yes, John, you die and you get a stand. Essentially, is how that works. But that's also the same for Beast.
Why are we not playing that game? Die and get a stand?
You want me to try to run a Geist game after this? Not after this, but...
No. We got other things to do. Anyway, talk about the splats. There's always Werewolf, which you'll never guess. You're a werewolf, and your stats are insane.
Your stats as a vampire are insane. And granted, each of these splats have their various base effects that are covered, so on and so forth, like your vampire. Your vampires do not suffer from, they take reduced damage. Vampire.
Steve, you're breaking, man.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, I think we came back.
What was I saying? What was the last thing you heard? I'm sorry.
You were talking about vampires not taking damage from a lot of stuff.
Right. Or each splat is different, and each splat has various benefits and bonuses based upon what you're playing. Vampires don't give a fuck about gunfire.
Indeed. Anyway, there's also Mage, which looks super interesting, although I don't understand half of the source book.
And there's a better version of Mage.
We'll get to that. Looks super interesting, but I don't understand half the source book. But you play a magic user of some kind and do magic stuff with wizards. Mage is the one I'm the most interested in and the one I know the least about.
It does look fun. You also have Promethean, where for those Mary Shelley fans out there, Frankenstein's monster's journey on a journey to become Pinocchio. That is Promethean.
Yep, that is in fact Promethean, and they get healed by electricity.
Fun time.
Indeed. Mummy. Yes, I do mean mummy. I do mean actually a guy wrapped in cloth who's been dead for a while.
Or Brendan Fraser.
Or what? Yes, I do mean Brendan Fraser. What else is there? Demon the Descent, which is not what you think it is. It's way better.
It is hilarious, and demons are fuck-mothering terrifying.
That is a true fact. God, I feel like maybe we're still missing some.
Hunter is a thing.
Hunter is a thing? Oh, there's a whole other kind of demon. There are two demons.
I love 1D4chan's description of demon. You escaped from the Matrix and now are in a cold war with God, who is the Matrix.
That's right, Changeling the Lost. It is hugely popular and has like 10 supplements. My point is, there are a lot of splats, and if you start looking at them, you might find one that works for you. You might find one you want to play with friends of yours. And if you don't find one you want to play with friends of yours, there's always the fan-made ones.
Yes, the fan-mades.
For example, Princess the Hopeful.
Oh my god, I forgot about that one.
I am not joking. This is a World of Darkness game where you play a Disney princess.
You also have Mutant the Aberration, where I imagine you are the X-Men.
Yeah, that's actually almost exactly what that is. And then, of course, there is the elephant in the room, the one that we've been playing for a while. The one that this game has been going on for almost a year now. And that is, of course, Genius the Transgression.
I love me some Genius.
So, Genius is like we were saying, it's a fan splat. It's a fan-made game using the same system that we've been talking about this whole time, in the same slightly twisted version of the modern day, only the players are mad scientists.
Think Dr. Venture, Rick Sanchez,
Dr. Horrible.
The doctor from the beginning of Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
The actual doctor, if you get powerful enough.
Yep, pretty much.
Pretty much. And that's kind of what that's what inspired us to do That's what inspired us to do this podcast on this subject, because World of Darkness, if you can get past the weirdness, if you can get past the kind of funky feeling you get about playing in the world you also happen to live in, it has a lot to offer.
So very much. And as I said earlier, if you have a really good storyteller or one who's just insane, you can absolutely combine all of the above.
That is absolutely true. We forgot about Beast the Primordial as a splat. That is like almost specifically designed for combining other splats.
Beast is one that you have more experience with me, because I did not get to make a character for that game because of my work schedule, but everything I've seen about it is great, and Beast is one of the official splats.
Right, that's a real one. Generally disliked, but still quite good if you... Again, you have to put yourself in the game a little bit. You have to step back, figure out what works, and work with it. And it really helps to have a storyteller who's not, well, childish about it, I guess.
Shout out to Super Sticky Shark in the chat, who is the storyteller for that, I believe.
Yes, that's true. And you can really do a lot. Like, the modern fantasy setting is not actually as limiting as you would think. Like, yes, okay, it's 2018. You can play any time between like 1996 and today if you want. But okay, fine. It's 2018. You're in America. There's a city. Maybe you're in Seattle. You're usually in Seattle. It's raining. The government is terrible. Everything's pretty terrible. The economy's not doing too bad. That is the setting. When you get right down to it, that is the setting for World of Darkness. But you can do a lot more with it. For example, in running the Genius the Transgression game that I run, I actually brought in a lot of elements from other canons, specifically the SCP Foundation.
Which makes World of Darkness, when you put SCP Foundation World of Darkness, which just sort of fits.
It really went together scarily well, yeah.
For those who are not familiar with SCP Foundation, it is probably one of the, I wouldn't say best kept secrets on the internet, but not everybody knows about it. But it is just, how to describe it?
I don't think that describing it's actually a thing that we're going to be able to do. Well, no, let's see if it'll let me drop links in the chat. Oh, it will.
Oh yes, 173.
I'm just going to link
The
everybody to
first.
SCP-173. It's an internet classic. Everyone should read it if they haven't already. Because it's about 2 paragraphs long and it's not super hard. Anyway, by just combining elements of different modern fantasy universes, including mostly that one because it just fits so well, you really managed to create a world that, even though it superficially looks kind of like the one we live in, is really unique and your own. There's still a lot of intrigue, a lot of mystery to it, because there are things going on that only the storyteller is privy to. There are things happening in the world that the players do not know about, even though it's the same world they inhabit in real life.
Correct. Just backtracking briefly, like Brandon said, you can set World of Darkness anywhere between 96 and
Steven's cut out again, but
sorry,
okay,
96 and 2018. In fact, my World of Darkness, my Vampire the Masquerade game was set in essentially 90s New York. But it doesn't even have to be that. You could set World of Darkness in any time period you want, because primarily the story for World of Darkness, from the various splats and everything, allows you to explore history. You want to set a Vampire the Masquerade game in Renaissance France, you absolutely can. But for the sake of discussion, modern World of Darkness works better because it's so fucking terrifying. Did I cut out again?
my apologies, my microphone was muted.
Okay.
No, I'm here. Okay, so, what was the question?
It wasn't really a question.
Oh, okay.
I was expanding upon the whole thing, like you know, like you said earlier, you can set World of Darkness between 1996 and 2018, but you can set it in whatever time period you literally think you could set a time period. Renaissance France for Vampire the Masquerade.
Well,
Do you
you
want
really
it?
ought to set it in a time period where the computer skill will be useful.
True, you could, but you know, you can homebrew whatever you need to, but World of Darkness, it's best in modern because the modern world is so terrifying.
Right,
And
and
then it
again,
does-
the goal of the game should be horror if you're running World of Darkness, but that doesn't have to be the be-all, end-all. It doesn't have to be just horror.
Yeah, like Sticky Shark is saying in the chat. Dark Ages Vampires, the thing. Like, you can set it wherever you need to be and homebrew things around, but really, World of Darkness modern setting is the best because the modern world is terrifying. It's made more terrifying when you take into account that there are vampires controlling various aspects of the world, or werewolves, or mages, or geniuses.
Right, it is all of the horror of the modern world made all the more horrifying by things that you don't know about. Or, as is ingenious, the most terrifying thing is that no one's in control.
Correct. There's various organizations who think they are in control, but newsflash and spoiler alert, they're really not.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
We kind of went off kilter there. Where were we?
I don't know. I have no idea where we were. I do think that we've had an amazing discussion tonight. Oh, were we talking about splats? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, we were talking about splats.
Super Sticky Shark says World of Darkness is great for personal and existential horror specifically. Yes, true. Because, well, I mean, you can't give somebody a jump scare at a table. Actually, I guess you can.
You just have to have siblings.
Yeah, I mean, I've been accused of having jump scares in my text RP.
Yes, you have.
Yep. But yeah, there is, and some people might find the thematics a little limiting, because at its root, World of Darkness is a horror game.
Oh, absolutely. You can't have anything that features vampires and werewolves and mummies and so on and so forth without. I don't think we fully covered what Beast was, and that Beast are probably the most terrifying thing, or one of.
Well, okay, so yeah, Beast the Primordial. It's a So in the game, the players are. This is actually kind of difficult to describe. The players are humans whose souls have been replaced by nightmarish eldritch abominations, or actually just nightmares.
I could see that. You could say that Beast kind of dips into a little bit of Lovecraftian horror.
Well, it is a little bit Lovecraftian, but that's not quite what I mean. Because, so the thing about Beast is that the beasts are nightmares out of the human psyche, literally. That is literally what they are.
The whole premise of we have a fear of the darkness because we do not know what it holds. Things of that nature. Kind of.
They're things out of the collective unconscious. You know, the thing hunting you in the dark, whatever. If you can have a nightmare about it, it could be in Beast. I'm playing a character based on Seath the Scaleless, and it's working disturbingly well. Yeah, disturbingly well. But that's really the trick, I think. You just have to kind of open up to it. Don't be afraid to be a little bit silly in the service of greater terror.
Oh, indeed.
Yes, indeed. So I think that I think that we've had a good discussion about World of Darkness tonight, and what everyone can gain out of at least giving one of the splats a try, just giving it a look and trying out the what do they call the system?
The
White Wolf system. That's what it's called. Even just trying out the White Wolf system, because throwing nothing but D10s can get surprisingly fun. I just, I wanted to kind of raise awareness about the World of Darkness and about what kind of things you could do in it. Chronicles of Darkness, that's right. The system is great. The setting can be great if you've got a good storyteller. And there's so much room to play different kinds of characters in different kinds of situations. And there are so many games contained within this one game, that it's something that every tabletop player should at least look at one time, even if they don't turn out to like it.
I would agree wholeheartedly. The fucking God Machine.
Yep, God Machine Chronicles, yep. That's exactly right. And we didn't even touch on the God Machine, and I don't think we should. I think we should just say the words God Machine and leave off. Let people who want to know find out for themselves. Because it's one of the few things in the setting that I find terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
Indeed.
So fucking terrifying. I'm kind of looking through this real quick, and there's another game line that it's not so much a splat. Deviant the Renegades is apparently a thing, which kind of sums up an idea you had briefly. It's apparently the next one they're going to release, where you're low power tier body horror, you're just some poor sap caught by a mad scientist or Black Ops Biocorp. Or a cult.
So, like, Prototype?
I think it's literally you end up calling back to the setting for the Genius game. You're literally like a D-class caught by SCP.
Oh, awesome! That sounds amazing. So, that was called Deviant the Renegade?
Deviant the Renegades. Apparently, it's going to be. It's the 11th game set in White Wolf's New World of Darkness, and it has not yet been released, but it looks like it's going to be hilarious. Apparently, it's a bit more like you're captured and you're remade by, either a cult or a mad scientist, so on and so forth.
So experimented on and made into a monstrosity.
Correct. But I guess in that point, they're including mad scientists. Does that mean Genius confirmed canon?
It better be.
What it fucking sounds like.
I mean, I don't want to call a splat that's not official the best splat, but
I would say it is, but that's just my opinion.
All right, demigods in there's literally another splat that we didn't even mention, and it's Immortals.
Oh, Immortals.
Anyway, I think that's actually where we're going to leave off for now. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning into the podcast today. I hope everyone has left with more interest in the World of Darkness than they came with. And if you want to be part of the program, message me on Discord. There's always room for more speakers. If you want to suggest a topic or just offer general feedback, you can message me on Twitter at Padre Luminadre, or on this Twitch, or in the Discord.
I'm a little bit harder to get a hold of. You're probably better off reaching out to Brandon.
Fair enough. So I've been Brandon.
I've been Steven.
And thank you very much for listening to us ramble while we drink.
This has been Save versus Bourbon, and I believe I failed that save.